Session 17 is covered biodiversity at global, national, and local level India as the mega diversity. The global patterns of biodiversity, the present geological era, the perhaps the richest biological diversity, about nearly 2.1 million species have been identified in till data. While many more species are believed exist according to the UNEP in the 1993 to 94 UN Convention on Environmental Protection estimated the total number of species that might exist. On the Earth range, it is nearly 9.0 to 52 million invertebrates, animals and plants make up for the most of the species. About 70% known species are invertebrates, the animals without backbone such insects. The sponge worms, while about 15% of plants, mammals, animals and group which man belong to the comparatively small number. The species of all the world species, only the 10 to 15% of in North America, Europe. By contrast, the centers of the great biodiversity tend to be tropic and 20 countries most of the rich biodiversity. The patterns in biodiversity, the species are not uniformly distributed over the earth. Diversity varies from place to place. In that terms, the number of basic kinds of an organisms and number species of the each kind of biodiversity has varied markedly through geological time. In terms of the present day species are richness of biodiversity. It is the most of the varies greatly between one part of the earth another. The present global pattern in the biodiversity indicated that the species richness tends to be very geographically. According to the series fairly well defined rules, for the example in case of the terrestrial environment. In the terrestrial environment, the warmer areas hold more species than the cold areas. Wetter areas hold more species than drier ones. The larger areas holds more species than smaller areas. Areas from varied climate and topography hold more species than areas uniform climate and topography. Areas lower altitude hold more species than high altitude areas. In the less seasonal areas hold more species than high seasonal areas. In more of the simplified way, it can say that the much more per unit area overall the tropic than the temperature regions and for the than polar regions. The moist tropical forest in general are the most species are rich areas on earth. So they cover just 7% of the world surface, but it that can hold the 90% of the world species if add to unknown tropical forest microfauna and are the accepted if the small tropical forest counted than the areas that similarly rich in species. In the coral reefs, the Mediterranean climate, South Africa, Western Australia, and these areas are very rich in species, especially in the flowering plants and angiosperms. The regions of greater biodiversity in the tropic regions. The centers of great biodiversity tend to be tropics. The reasons for the greater biodiversity in the tropic are under tropical areas receives more solar energy over the year. Therefore, tropical communities are more productive, resulting in the greater resource based on support of the wide range of species. In the warmer temperature, high humidity, tropical areas provide the favorable environmental conditions. Many species that survive in the temperate areas. Over the geological times, the tropic have had the more stable climate than the temperature areas. In the tropic area, therefore, the local species continued the temperate zones, they tend to the disperse to their areas. There are more time the tropical communities evolve older than the temperature ones. This could be allowed to the tropical communities. The most of the great degree of specialization of the local adaptations of occur in the tropic region. It is a greater pressure from the pest and parasites diseases. In the single species dominant, thus the opportunity for many species coexist in the temperature areas. The pressure from the pest and parasite diseases due to the cold, and there is no few dominating species yet excluded species into the tropic and rates and outcoming of the among the plants and may lead to higher level. India as the mega biodiversity. Biodiversity as the three aspects of wide genetic species ecosystem. India recognized to be uniquely rich in all these three aspects. The country has rich heritage biodiversity encompassing the spectrum habitat from the tropical rainforest, alpine vegetation, and from the temperature forest the coastal wetlands. Almost all biogeographical regions of the world represent. India is the 2.4% of the total land area in the world is known. Biodiversity contribute nearly 8.22% known as the global biodiversity. India is the one of the 12 mega biodiversity nation in the world accounting for the 7.31% of the global fauna, 10.88% of the global flora total species. The currently available data, India in the 10th position in the world, 4th in the Asia in the plant diversity in terms of number of mammalian. The species of the country ranks 10th in the world and in the terms of endemic. The species of higher vertebrates, it ranks 11th in terms of number of species contribute to agriculture and animal husbandry. It ranks 7th in the world. India has two major realms called Paleoarctic and Indo-Malayan, and three biomes, namely tropical humid forest and tropical dry forest. Forest and warmer desert, semi-desert. India has the biogeographical regions, namely Trans-Himalayan region and the Indian desert semi-arid zone, Western Ghats and Deccan Peninsular region, genetic plain, northeast India and island at the coast. India is the one of the 12 mega biodiversity nation in the world. India, one of the 12 centers origin cultivated plants. There are two hotspots that extended in India. There are Western Ghats and Sri Lanka to Indo-Burman region. It is covering about the eastern Himalaya. Further, those hotspots included among the top 8 most important hotspots in India. 26 recognized endemic centers that home to nearly third all the flowering plants, especially in the angiosperm, identified and described to the data. India has the 6 Ramsar in the wetlands. In the Chilka Lake, Arikia Lake, Lotak Lake, Kyolodia National Park, Ular Lake and Sambar Lake. India has the World Heritage, 5 World Heritage sites, namely Kaziranga National Park and Ghana National Park, Manasa Wildlife Sanctuary, Nanda Devi National Park and Sundarban National Park. India has the 12 biosphere reservoir, namely Nilagiri, Nanda Devi, Naurakera Manasa, Sundaraban, Gulf, Mannar, Great Nicobar and Dibur, Saikob, Dhang, Pachamarchi and Kanjirang. Further, amongst the protected areas in the nearly 88 national parks and 490 sanctuaries in the India, covering about nearly 1.53 lakh square kilometer. Based on this survey, about 2/3 of the geographical areas country, Ministry of Forest and Environment reports India as the percent of 89,317 species faunas and 45,316 species of flora, representing the about 7.31% of the world fauna and 10.88% of the world flora described. In plant species, richness is the high angiosperm and bryophyta, pteridophytes and in the family Orchidae and animals Arthropoda. And India also rich agrobiodiversity. There are 167 crop species, wild relatives. Further, India considered to be a center for origin of 30,000 to 50,000 varieties of rice, pigeon pea, mango, turmeric, ginger and sugarcane and gooseberries, and ranks 7th terms in contribution of the world agriculture. India also boasts the rich marine biodiversity along the coastal line, nearly 7,516.5, with exclusive economic zones of the 202 million square kilometers supporting the most of the productive ecosystem as the mangroves. In the lagoons of the coral, number of zooplankton records is about nearly 16,000 species. Benthic faunas largely consists of the crustaceans and molluscs 18% with the biomass about 12 grams per square meter. Over 30 species of marine algae and 14 species of seagrasses have been reported. In the 45 species of mangrove plants, over 342 species of the coral belong to the 76 genera have been reported. About 50% of the world rebuilding the corals found in India.